Hi guys, and welcome back to another video where in this video I'm going to be showcasing how to send post HTTP requests within Unreal Engine blueprints. In this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to use the alternative to the asynchronous HTTP request, which will allow you to spread out your logic across multiple steps before actually sending the request. And also, I'm going to be demonstrating a face swap API, which will allow me to take two different faces and combine them into one new human. And I have to say, it did a great job at the very end. So stick to the end if you want to see what that API managed to do. But before we get into the video, I just wanted to put a little disclaimer in here that this video is based on a plugin. The plugin is HTTP and JSON Blueprint Utility. Alternatively, you could get the HTTP Pro. Both of those plugins will work to achieve the functionality in today's video. And plugins can be found on my Fab store or alternatively on my Gumroad store. Links to both of those stores will be down in the description below, so make sure to have a look and check them out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so before we actually start sending any HTTP requests, we need a project. So I'm going to be using a project that I've created in the last video, and that video is about sending GET HTTP requests. That video can be found in the description or on screen right now. Just pressing that will take you to that video. But if you're starting out fresh, any project version will be fine as long as the plugin supports it. In my case, the latest engine is 5.5. So that is the engine version used for the current project I'm going to be working in. So I'm going to launch the project now and let it load, and I'll be right back. And as you can see, the project now has loaded, and this is just the Unreal Engine third-person template, just straight out of the box, just as you get it. There is no extra code or anything like that, which was done off screen. So this can be followed straight out of the box. But the only thing which I have done while the project was loading is search the internet for a API which accepts post HTTP requests, which will be nice to showcase in this video. And from doing some research, I have found this API right here. What this API does is it takes a target image and a source image. So for the source image, we have this guy right here, very cool. And our target image is going to be Superman, Man of Steel. So what this API will do is take our source image and the target image and combine them to fuse into one. So what I like about this website is actually if you subscribe to a certain API, some APIs cost, some don't, some have limits, how much you can use per month. This is free, but it has a limit how many times I can send a request to this API. So I have to be kind of careful so I don't waste my monthly allowance. But I have gone ahead and tested this API beforehand. And using the provided two images here, I have sent the request and I have been returned this result image link. And the link will include both of these images fused into one. And as you can see right here, we have Man of Steel with the other guy's face. Very cool. We can see some artifacting here. I guess the API did its best. You could take this image into Photoshop, do some cleaning up, and the image will look just good as new. So yeah, so this is going to be the result and what we're going to aim for today in the video. So from two source images, we're going to combine it into one. So first things first is we need to figure out what is the API for this post request. So if I just quickly go to code snippet and then so if I change the target to C and then the URL is right here. So I'm going to copy this URL or this API. By the way, a link to this website and to this specific API will be in the description below. So if you would like to give it a go and check it out yourself, everything's down in the description. I am now going to head back into Unreal and we're going to get started on the actual code itself. Okay, so now back in Unreal, I'm going to open up the third person character. So mine is right here. I'm going to just open it up. So here is the actual default logic you get when you create a new third-person template. All of you guys should have this. I'm going to keep it as is and just start building the logic from begin play. There is no begin play here, so I'm just going to add begin play right here. And there you go. So in the previous video for the get HTTP request, I used this node right here, which is an asynchronous HTTP request node, which works, but it cannot be collapsed into a function. It will not allow you to collapse this into a function as it is an asynchronous node, and we know this by this little clock in the corner. So in this version, I'm not actually going to use the asynchronous HTTP request node, but the alternative, which is a non-asynchronous node, but it still works behind the scenes like it would using asynchronous sending and receiving. But for blueprint wise, it will not block you from creating functions. So if I type in HTTP request, and as you guys can see here, it says asynchronous. We don't want this tab, we want to create. So create new HTTP request. So as you can see, both of these nodes are actually basically the same, minus the little clock in the corner. So that's how we know this is not asynchronous, and it's gonna allow us to collapse this into a function if we want it to. So for now, I'm gonna undo that and remove the function, and I'm just gonna remove the asynchronous node. I'm just gonna use this create HTTP request node right here. So as this is not an asynchronous node, you as a developer actually have much more freedom and choice of how you want to approach and build this system. So in this case, instead of just calling the function and then it's sending the request right away, we can actually prolong when we send the request and choose ourselves when the request should be sent. So when you create a new HTTP request, you actually create a proxy object. This proxy object is actually going to store all of the information to do with your request. Once you're happy with the information stored in that request, you can call process HTTP request, and this is the function which is actually going to be in charge of sending your request to the API. Alongside this process HTTP request, there's also a few helper functions which would allow you to customize your request further down the line without having to input the data right away. So for instance, if you have a URL which is wrong or just a test URL here, but later down the line you have a system which the player provides their own URL, you could drag out from the proxy asset and set URL manually. So now you actually overwritten what the original URL was with your new URL. To demonstrate all of the other utility functions which come with this create new HTTP request node, I'll just drag out from this proxy object and just type in HTTP. And here are a few or maybe all of the actual utility functions which come with this request itself. Okay, so now let's actually get into building this logic. So we know that the URL for it is this, as I've copied and pasted it from the website itself. And I also know that we are going to be sending a post request type. So I could set the request type here to post directly, or I could set the request type like this. And this will also work fine. But for now, I'm just going to set it directly. For the timeout, we're going to set it to 60 seconds. Just to go over quickly what timeout does. Timeout will be the time in seconds, how long the HTTP request will be waiting to send or receive information back from the server. If information hasn't been sent or received within 60 seconds, the request will be dropped automatically. So I always recommend anyone using this plugin to set something to this timeout, even if it's 10, 20 or 30 seconds. I personally like to set it to 1 minute. So I give it plenty of buffer space to send and receive the data back if in case there is any lag or the server taking its time to process the information. Okay, so with this timeout now set and with the URL set, we need to customize what kind of images we want to send the API. So in this scenario, we're going to be using the request body. So if I drag off from this request body struct and type in make, we're going to be creating a new make HTTP body. This is a struct or body of the HTTP request you're sending. This body is going to contain more information about the HTTP request you're sending. So in this case, you can add extra headers, a string body, which would just be any type of data in string form, or finally a JSON body. So just as string body, you're sending data but in JSON format. And this is actually the preferred way of sending data using this plugin, as the plugin also supplies you with a very large range of JSON logic. This is a very handy and easy way of sending any extra data you might want. Okay, so now we actually know how to use the nodes. We need to figure out what kind of data we need to send to the API for the API to recognize what we've sent and actually process the data. So going back to the website, I can actually have a look how they construct their HTTP request. And as I can see here, they use an X Rapid API key, which is part of a header. So I'm going to use this X Rapid API key and create a new map for the headers like this. And for the key for this header is going to be X Rapid API key. And then I'm going to actually take the key and just paste it in here as value. Okay, and then I'm going to add another pin, which is going to be another entry in the headers list. And the second header is going to be X Rapid API host. And then the host is going to be this API right here. And content type is application JSON. So by default, any HTTP request you send using this plugin will automatically be set to content type JSON, so we do not actually have to provide it here. That's just the default, so I can skip that one, and I don't think these are needed, so I'm gonna skip those. And then I'm gonna look here at the body. So this is the main data we're actually sending within the request. This is what the API is gonna take and do its magic on. So the JSON body is structured like this. It takes two JSON string fields, one called target image URL and the second is called source image URL, and then it is provided with links to two different images. Okay, so we're gonna just copy literally what is shown here within Unreal Engine. So I'm gonna just copy target image URL, this name, go back to Unreal, and now there is many different ways you as the developer could approach this, and I'm going to show you one of those ways, but if you find a different way, that's completely fine. This is just a quick and easy way for me to demonstrate in this video. So I'm going to right click anywhere in the open space and type in new JSON, and then I'm going to be looking for new pure JSON object right here. So what this pure function is going to do is actually create a new JSON object for me. Now I actually can take this object and populate it with any data I want. So for instance, what we want is this JSON object to hold the source image and the target image. So dragging off from JSON object, I'm going to then use a set JSON field node. This is again a pure function. So let's break this down real quick. So within the set JSON field is going to first take a JSON object. So this references the actual object you want to store data in, the field name. So we know the field name from the website, and that is target image URL. And then finally, it takes in an in data. As you might see, this is a gray input node. And if you hover your mouse over it, it says wildcard. What a wildcard is it doesn't accept a specific data type, but it accepts any data type. So this could be a boolean, an integer, a string, a float. We as the developers need to know what kind of data we want to set and send. So I know that this is going to take a link to an image. So in this case, that has to be a string. So I'm going to drag off from this wildcard and type in make literal string. And now as you can see, by making a literal string, that gray input pin was now converted into a string. So now here I can type in the link to the image and it should all work fine. So if I go back to the website and take the target image link, just copy that and just paste it in here. And now that's set. So now our target image is that link. Let's now move on to making the source image. So now, as you guys can see, we have a JSON object where we are setting a target image URL and a source image URL and providing it with two different links to two different images, okay? We're going to move it to the side. Once we are done and happy with how this is looking, I'm going to connect out data straight into JSON body, like that. I'll just quickly connect begin play. And finally, I'm going to take out HTTP request and just type in process HTTP request. And just to be sure, I'm going to create a new branch and just plug in success into this condition. And if only we had a successful output from the request, we're going to process the request. Okay, now this is technically set up correctly. And if I press play, this request will send and it's going to be successful. But there is actually nothing for me here to read what kind of data it returned from the server. As you might notice within the asynchronous node, we have output pins right here, which provide us with the output of the JSON, which is provided by the server. But in this case, we don't have this. To access any output data, we actually have to bind those delegates ourselves. So to do this, we're going to have to pull out from out HTTP request and type in bind. And then at the very top, we're going to have event dispatchers, and the three event dispatchers which we really want to look out for, or if you want, you can use, is on failed, on progress, and on success. In this case, I don't mind if it fails or progresses. I just want a success. So I'm just going to bind it to success like that. And then out of event, I'm going to type in custom event. And there you go. We have a new custom event, which will provide us with the out information once the HTTP request returns with the information from the server. So I'm going to just move process HTTP request to the side and bind this event right like this, and then just reconnect process HTTP request. So now when the process has been sent and we receive an on success event, that means the request was successful and it has returned some information to us. So assuming the returned information is valid and everything's working fine, we can access the returned information from out JSON. So what I would do in this situation is actually convert this to string like this and then print it to screen. But as I mentioned before, because I have limited use of this API, I don't want to waste a request just to test this. And I've already tested it on the website. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to check again on the website what kind of data this out JSON is going to return us. So if I go here and go into result, JSON, I now see this is the JSON body, which is returned when the HTTP request is successful. And out of all these entries, we mostly want to look for result image URL. So this is actually the image which is fused. It takes those two images into one. So knowing that, we can actually pull out from out JSON and we're going to try get string field. And the string field name we're looking for is result image URL. Okay, just like that. I'm just going to be safe and have a success check here. If everything is fine and it's successful, I know this is going to return me a URL to an image. So actually, rather than just printing that URL to screen, I'm going to launch that URL. So I'm just going to launch URL just like that and connect this link to this node. And just like that, we created a system which will take two different links to two different images. Then this API is going to send that body to the server, where the server is going to do its AI magic and fuse those two images together. And if everything is successful, it's going to return a JSON for us, which will have the result image URL within it. Then, if that's all valid, we're actually going to launch a new website with that fused image in that website. So let's actually compile and save and minimize that and press play. And now hopefully any second now, my internet should open up with the fused face. There it is. Okay, so I did have to wait like 30 seconds. It provided us with the exact same output as it did when I was testing it directly from the website. So I know everything was working fine and the API was correct. Okay, so we know that the request sent from here was successful and it did fuse the two images together and open up a new website for me, which showed me the result. But this here is very hard coded to these two different links, and it's not very easy to change. Or if you also create a game or compile this, it would be very hard to change once it's actually built. So let's create a function which will take two different links and then easily just send the HTTP request and then provide you with the outcome. So what we can do is actually take all of this and just collapse this down into a function, just like that. And as you can see, just because we collapse that to a function, we actually have an output pin, which is their proxy asset, which gets created. This is fine because this proxy asset needs to bind to a delegate right here. So this is what's happening here. This can stay. But within this function, we can just zoom in and create two new input pins, both of type string. And then we're gonna name them appropriately. So it's gonna be target image URL, and then source image URL, just like that. And now what we have to do is, rather than hard coding these two values, we're just going to access these input pins like this. So target is going to go into target and source is going to go into source. Oops, into source. As you can see, this is spaghetti hell and we don't like code like this. So I'm going to show you a really quick tip. If you're working within a function and you create yourself input pins, you can actually access them directly anywhere within this function by just calling the name of the input pin. So for instance, I could just do get target image URL. And as you can see, this is actually indicated here with this little F. This is a local variable just within this function. And this here is accessing this input pin. So I can just disconnect these two and get target image and just provide it in here like this. And exactly the same for the source. I can do source image URL and just provide it here. Oops, here. Okay, I have cleaned up the function. The function now looks like this. As you can see, this is all looking good. And now I can actually back out from the function and I can just call this something appropriate like send face swap request. And then here actually I can provide my links now. So in this case, I actually went online to find two different images which are not provided by the API, just to see how the API can handle them. So the first image I found was of The Rock himself. Use that as the target image. And for the source image, I'm going to be actually using this handsome guy. Paste it in here. And assuming everything's correct, I'm going to compile, save, and run the game. And after a few seconds, a new tab should open in my browser. Okay, and actually about 30 or 40 seconds of waiting and letting the AI do its thing and think about it, it has returned with... Okay, damn. It actually did a very good job, I must say. I like this new version of The Rock. Much more handsome. And yeah, this is a new profile picture for me. So this is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I just wanted to say thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please do leave a like or subscribe if you would like to see more tutorials on plugins like this or any tutorials in general for Unreal. I'll be happy to make some generic tutorials also. And on screen, what you can see now is actually a showcase project that comes with any plugin you get from my stores. So if you would like to have a look and check that out, all of that is available. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. See ya.